Hi, and welcome to this episode of Facebook Friday. Today, I'm going to answer the question, why does my child get A's on math homework yet fails the test? My name is Jennifer Ledwith, and I'm the owner of SCHOLARSPOT. At SCHOLARSPOT, we prepare families financially and academically for higher education. One of the great things we do is we tutor students in math. We work with students typically primarily from the 9th grade in college, and working with them from about Algebra 1 to Calculus 1 with their math skills. We also help students with writing skills, and we prepare them for the PSAT, SAT, and ACT. I'll tell you a little bit about why I started SCHOLARSPOT in 2004. I was graduating from college, and I graduated from college with only $1,000 in student loan debt. And that's because and the reason I have $1,000 in student loan debt is because I wanted to buy plane tickets. But my education was $64,000, and I was able to pay for that primarily through scholarships. And my scholarships are very much connected to my writing skills, my persistence, and also my test taking skills. I have very good test scores. And also, I worked part-time every year. I was in college, and I never failed a class. I entered college with some advanced placement credit, and I was able to graduate in 4 years. And so those are some of the things that I can use to credit my low debt for my undergraduate education. I have a degree from the University of Oklahoma. I'm from Houston, Texas. Yes, that's right. Out-of-state tuition, out-of-state education. Only graduated with $1,000 in student loan debt. After I finished from University of Oklahoma, I attended Rice University, and I completed my master's certificate in personal financial planning. So I am also a certified financial planner. That's where the plan financially for college comes from. Today, we're going to talk about about math homework, about the disconnect between math homework and the math exams. I also want to talk with you a little bit about SCHOLARSPOT. If you'd like to learn more about SCHOLARSPOT, we have a newsletter that goes out about twice a month to talk more about these issues. And if you want to, you can text scholars in all caps, SCHOLARS in all caps to the following number, 22828. Standard text messaging rates do apply. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about why. This is a question that I get all the time from parents. Why is it that my child is scoring A's on the homework and even on the quizzes, yet my student fails the exams? What's going on? Well, first of all, I'll tell you this. There are a few things. So we'll talk about 3 things. The first thing will be textbooks. The second aspect will be just independent practice. And the third would be knowing how to check your answers. All right. So the first issue is textbooks. Most of my students who are in my practice, in my private practice, I have students who I meet through Skype. And most of my students do not have textbooks. My students who attend public school, most of them do not have textbooks. Most of my students who are in private school have a textbook. Even if they don't have a physical textbook, they have access to an online textbook. Some of my public school students have access to some of them do actually have access to a textbook online. But they don't have the actual hard copy. So I'm going to give you some recommendations for Algebra 2, Geometry, and Pre-Calculus textbooks. I know parents back in the day, we all had textbooks, and especially in public school, it's kind of weird to think, oh, I may have to buy a textbook. But increasingly in my practice, I'm starting to buy books for my students and send them to them, because Miss Jennifer cannot be the textbook all the time. And plus, my students are college bound, and they need to know how to study. They need to know how to use a textbook to study, because when you go to college, your textbook will be your greatest teacher. So let's talk a little bit about some of the books I recommend. This is my old faithful Algebra 2 book. As you can see, there's a Post-it there because I use this book quite a bit. This is my Algebra 2 book. I actually use this book with students in Algebra 2. I also use this for students in pre-calculus and students preparing for the ACT. This is a wonderful book. It's Algebra 2, and no, I don't get any kind of commission or any kind of remuneration from recommending these books. I just really like these books. This is Algebra 2, McDougall-Littell. This is an older edition. The writer is Larson, and you can pick it up on Amazon.com. Check and see if it's on Amazon. It seems everything is on Amazon nowadays. So McDougall-Littell Algebra 2, great textbook. For geometry, there's also McDougall-Littell also makes a geometry textbook. It's very straightforward. In the past, some geometry textbooks have been a little abstract. This one is very straightforward, especially because a lot of times students who are transitioning from Algebra 1 to geometry, the transition is kind of rough, because thinking in algebra, the thinking that is required in algebra is different from the way you think in geometry. And this book offers a great transition from Algebra 1 to geometry. And pre-calculus. This is another good book. I guess maybe Ron Larson is probably my favorite math textbook writer. You have pre-calculus. Pre-calculus with limits. It's Larson. This is an older edition. There are actually other editions of this book, of course, recent editions of this book, but the books don't typically change through the years. So number one, you need textbooks, and that goes into number two. Students need to have independent practice. You need more resources for independent practice. Often students complete their homework in class. And if you're in class with other students or with the teacher, it's very likely that the student is not completing those assignments independently. The student needs to be able to complete those assignments independently. So you want to just you can go into the textbook and read those examples, read through the examples. For example, if the topic is quadratic functions, you can go into the Algebra 2 book and use the index, and go to quadratic functions and look at the quadratic functions and read the examples and do the practice problems. And there are solutions in the back of the book to help you verify whether your answer is right. So the first issue to answer the question, why does my child get A's on math homework yet fails the test? The first answer is you need a textbook. All right. The second issue is you need independent practice. I find that when my students can explain a concept to me thoroughly and concisely, that means that the student understands it. When I have students try to explain a concept to me, for example, how to solve for x in a quadratic function or a quadratic equation, you're trying to solve for x and you're explaining it to me, but you start off at step 3, and then you jump to step 6, and then you jump back to step 2. That tells me that the student doesn't understand what's going on, and they have to keep on practicing it and repeating it until they get it. One of my students can say things better than I can, and I asked one of my students the other day, well, how did you know to do it that way? And then she started her sentence with, well, in the book. And I said, yes, in the book. That's exactly what I want you to say, because ultimately, I enjoy working with my students over the years. However, ultimately, I want my students to become independent, and I want them to be able to move on and be able to study and prepare for exams without me. Now, I will take their referrals. Please send referrals to me. Send your siblings, send your cousins, send your friends to me. But send your nephews to me. but please, I need you to become independent. So the first thing you want to do is get a textbook. Number 2, practice independently. And the third thing we're going to talk about is being able to have confidence. Okay, so confidence on the test, and that has to do with being able to check your work. The beautiful part about math, about any algebra-based subject, is that you can check your answer. You can be the answer key. You don't need an answer key to understand whether x is equal to 5. Just plug it back in and see if it's right. So when you practice in the textbook and when you go through those practice problems, before you turn to the answer key to see if your answer is right, go ahead and go ahead and practice. Go back over and check over your work. Check over your work to see if it's right. Some of you who are making that transition from 8th grade math or 7th grade math to Algebra 1 are having a difficult time with signs like positive and negatives as it pertains to integers or whole integers or or real numbers or rational numbers. Some of you all are having a difficult time making that transition. That's okay. That's okay. You have a hard time making the transition. You know, back in the day when you did, when you asked your teacher 2 minus 5, your teacher probably said that's not possible. Well, of course, anybody who has a bank account knows that you can clearly, the banks can tell you that 2 minus 5 is -3. And if your banks tell you otherwise, I'm going to go take all my money out of my bank and I'm taking it to yours. Because I would like for someone to tell me that 2 minus 5, you can't do it. But 2 minus 5 is -3. But because you spent years thinking you can't do it and thinking there can be a -3, you have to practice. So when you review your homework, when you review your quiz, when you review your test, go back over and look at those signs. Make sure your signs are right. Take that final answer and plug it back in to the answer to see if it makes sense. And that way you can be your own answer key and be confident in your responses. Okay, so number 1. So let's go back. Let's reiterate. Why does my child get A's on math homework yet fails the test? Because the student is not studying well enough. So this is, again, I'll repeat the steps in closing. Here are the steps to practice. Number 1, get a textbook. These are wonderful. These are wonderful, wonderful textbooks. Number 1, get a textbook. Number 2, practice the different lessons and the different exercises in the textbook. And number 3, learn how to check your work yourself without the answer key. Thank you for attending Facebook Friday. This is answering the question of why does my child get A's on math homework yet fails the test? Check Scholar Ready out at www.scholaready.com. You can, to learn more about Scholar Ready, you can text scholars in all caps to 22828. I am Jennifer Ledwith, the owner of Scholar Ready, here for Facebook Friday. Have a wonderful day.